Welcome back, Tolkien fanatics, to this next video in the series on Middle-earth strategy battle game on heroic actions. So the first video I just kind of went over what heroic actions are, and in this video I will be talking about the specific heroic actions in the movement phase. So there are 4 of them, if I'm remembering correctly. Yep, I do. I'm not as bad as I thought I was. So there's 4 of them. This is probably going to be the longest video, so I do apologize for that. But it does have some of the most important ones in here, and I would say one that's not really seen, so I'll probably save that one to last just because my personal experience with it is slightly lacking. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start covering these heroic actions. So the first one we have is probably going to be the most important, I think, in my opinion, for games, especially when it comes to match play. Because in match play, especially when the 2 armies begin to clash and battle lines meet, whoever has priority in the ability to move their models, depending on the army, usually the heroes specifically, not all armies are hero dependent. Looking at like Goblin Town, the Shire, even Corsairs and Umbar, who I reviewed recently, those armies aren't so much hero dependent for their movement, as in, for example, we'll use the fiefdoms, one of my favorite armies, of course, I've mentioned before, and Prince Imrahil. So Prince Imrahil wants to move first. He wants to be able to charge, so he can, especially when he's on, his armored horse, which I think you should definitely take your heroes mounted if you can. The hitting power increase is ridiculous, but he wants to be able to charge first so he can get that extra attack. He wants to be able to charge first so we can get his lance bonus for charging. It's just very, it's very key for him to get those. And even in situations where, like, for example, if I were taking Imrahil and charging against other cavalry models, so I don't get my extra attack bonus there. I haven't covered cavalry yet, but that's a little sneak peek there. Cav on Cav don't get their charge bonus, but if he has his lance, which of course I'm going to give Imrahil his lance, he still gets the bonus of +1 to wound when he charges. So the heroic move, can be very useful in situations where you have lost priority. So again, you have to have a point of might in order to use any heroic actions. So if you're out of might, unfortunately you're not going to be able to call any heroic actions. So that is key. But for heroic move, the way it works is heroic move enables a hero to move before other models, essentially defying the usual priority system. So as I said in my last video, there are heroics that usurp the normal chain of events that would happen in a phase. So in a phase where, say, I have lost priority and my opponent has won it, he would be moving his models first. Well, as I just said, if I'm playing with Prince Imrahil, I want to move Imrahil first so that my opponent cannot charge me. Now, of course, this is a situational thing, which as you grow and learn the game, you're going to realize when is it important to use heroic movements, when is it not important to use heroic movements. If you have lost priority and you're on the far side of the table because of a scenario, especially in an early round or early couple rounds of a game, for example, being to the death, where deployment is 12 inches on your board half and your opponent is on the back 12 of his board half. So you've got a minimum of 24 inches between you two if you both deploy right on the line. All right? So if you lose priority in that situation, do you really care to use a point of might for heroic movement? No, because you're not going to get to your opponent. Now, there is another movement that you might want to do, and we'll get to that one in a second, but I want to finish up with heroic movement first. So it allows the hero to move first, as I said. This can be extremely valuable because of the fact, as I said earlier, it'll let you get your movements and your charges off. So there is a catch-22 to this. Or it's not really a catch-22. There's a... I don't know what the caveat to go with there. That's a good term. And that's called with me. So it's great to be able to move your one hero. But when battle lines clash, and especially if you're playing an army like Rohan, where in my opinion, Rohan, if you're going to play it, you might, unless you're playing a few specific legendary legions, you should play it all mounted. It's just better all mounted. The points are better. Now, if you want to play all foot, that's another topic. We can talk about that in an army review video. But the way I play Rohan is all mounted, and for my style of play, I think that is the best way to play it. So moving, say, Théoden in a heroic movement is great because he's then going to get his charge off. He's going to get that extra attack, which he desperately needs, only being 2 attacks. And he's going to get his strength bonus as well because their army bonus is +1 to your strength. I think it's for everybody. Yeah, it's for everybody. So that's great, though. But what about the rest of your cav? You've paid a lot of money points for these cav. And if only Théoden's charging and the rest of your army's getting charged by your opponent, well, you're going to lose pretty quickly because you're going to get outnumbered because all mounted armies have a tendency to have a lower total troop output than a not fully mounted army, of course, because you're paying more for those horses. So you do want to get charges in. So that's where with me comes in. And basically that just means that when you call heroic movement and you get the option to move first, you can call with me. In which case you measure 6 inches, 6-inch diameter, 6-inch radius from the hero that called it, and all friendly models inside that 6 inches have the option to move with the hero. Now, here's the catch-22 at that. There's actually a couple of them. If the models opt to move in this heroic movement, they must end their movement within 6 inches of the hero. So if you're doing a heroic movement to try and, say, get one of your heroes out of combat and run them far away, you have to then bring the rest of your guys with you. Now, they don't obviously have to be right on top of them, but all the models that you move in that will have to end within 6 inches. So if you move, say, for example, Boromir, and he runs 10 inches, but he's with a bunch of foot guys, those foot guys are not going to be able to keep up that 10 inches. Just even if they move 6 inches fully, some of the guys probably still are going to end outside of that 6-inch bubble that you're allowed to be in. So that being said, if you do not move and end within 6 inches of the hero who's called a heroic movement and called it with me, the model doesn't get to move at all during that turn. And that is kind of a point of view. That's kind of annoying, but that is important. So, heroic movement, call it with your hero. They get to move first. They can do everything that they normally would. Move, jump, climb, charge, and even do stand fasts when you're broken. Which is important because if you have a low courage army, you can do a stand fast. Or, like I said, Théoden earlier, say he calls it, he's a hero legend. If it's the first turn you've been broken, you get to auto pass your stand fast, which would help you keep your models in the fight. Because that's another downside is if you are not the priority player and your opponent charges all your heroes, you're not making any stand fast checks that would help keep your guys there. So that's heroic movement. A little convoluted, I know, but that should cover most of it there. So these next 3 are specialized ones as well. So heroic combat or heroic movement is one that all heroes have. As long as you have a point of might, you can call it with any hero. So these next 3 are specialized, and we'll start with heroic channeling because that's going to be probably the shortest and easiest to cover. So heroic channeling, a hero model uses a heroic channeling when using their channeled version of a magical power. Okay, so something I have noticed, guys, is heroes have to be declared at the beginning of a phase, and a lot of times people will forget that they're channeling a heroic power. And I'm very easygoing when it comes to gaming, and there'll be many a time where I always ask my opponent if I have one priority and I'm going to be moving first. I always try to ask my opponent, hey, are you calling any heroics? Because as the priority player, I feel it is my responsibility. It's not really my obligation to, but it's my responsibility to make sure my opponent has a chance and to have the option to call any heroic actions he would like. Because remember, the non-priority player calls heroic actions first. So heroic channeling, people always forget you have to call that at the beginning of a turn because heroics are again called at the beginning of a turn. So I've played against, we'll just say like Isengard, and the person has a shaman, and I'll do my movement as the priority player, and then he'll start his movement. He's like, okay, I'm going to cast a spell, and I'm going to cast a channel version. And I will never fail to say this because it is important to say and remind people of the rules. You technically can't do that, right? And they'll look at me like, what? I said, you're channeling it. If channeling is a heroic action, it's not like before where if you wanted, before spells had, you could do them. Now you actually have to call it. And I think I'm getting that right. I can't remember, but there used to be different levels of spells, and there still is different levels of spells, and they've been changed. I don't think channeled versions were considered heroic. No, they were, because you had to spend a point of might. But I don't remember. I don't know where I'm going with that. But anyway, on topic, heroic channel is a heroic action. Therefore, if you're going to call it, it needs to be declared at the beginning of the movement phase. Here is why that is important. Because, remember, when you call heroics, you have to immediately remove the points of might you are going to use. So, if your caster gets charged, so you're the non-priority player, right? You've called a heroic channel. Now the priority player moves and charges your caster. You have lost that point to might. And that is why it is important to remember you have to call heroic channels at the beginning of a move. Now, 99 times out of 100 that this has happened to me, them forgetting to call it at the beginning of the movement phase does not affect what I could possibly do. Now, there has been that one time where it's like, I wish you had told me that at the beginning because I would have charged your caster and canceled your heroic. Because if you charge a model before they get their heroic off, it is canceled, and I would have basically stolen, quote unquote, my opponent's point of might, because now they don't get to do their heroic channel. So please remember that if you're going to do a heroic channel, it is a heroic action, and heroic actions must be declared at the beginning of the phase that they are allowed to be used in. Heroic channeling is used in the movement phase, so if you want to do that, you need to declare it at the beginning of the movement phase. All right? I know I said it was a short one, and I went on for a little bit, but I want to make sure you guys understand the rules and understand how to do it properly for you new players out there. Their rules are here for a reason. Yeah, we bend some now and then, depending on how we're playing. Sometimes there's house rules for things, but for the most part, the rules are there, and we should follow them. Okay? So there's two more left, and I'm going to go over this one, and I'm probably going to read it for the most part straight from the book because I'm not very familiar with it, and that's Heroic Resolve. So normally these actions only happen when the model calling them gets the chance to move. So for example, heroic movement, yes, you're usurping the normal chain of event for the movement phase, but that model's going to get to move. So for heroic resolve, it actually happens instantaneously. That was a terrible snap. That might have been a little better. I can't tell. I've got these headphones in recording. But that takes place immediately, and it's important because friendly models within the 6-inch range of the hero declaring the heroic resolve immediately, including the hero himself, receive 1 free additional dice to any resist tests against magic for the remainder of the turn. In the case of warrior models and hero models with no will points remaining, this allows them to make a resist test on 1 dice rather than none. For a heroic resolve, 1 for heroic resolve and 1 for resistance magic. That's weird. What? That seems kind of goofy to say. No will remaining. That is allowed. Okay. Basically, the heroic resolve just gives you a point of will, quote unquote, to resist spells. Why is this important? They have been nerfed in FAQs, but before that happened, Nature's Wrath and Wrath of Brunian were 6-inch AoE, area of effect spells, that were extremely potent against armies like Rohan that are all cav. Since they give you the ability to knock everybody down in a 6-inch range, I mean, that's a 12-inch diameter. You're talking about a lot of knockdown power, plus usually people try to channel them, which I believe for one of them, if I remember it, I think it's Nature's Wrath does I think they both do. I think they do a strength something. I want to say like strength 2 wound, maybe a strength 3. The channeled version ends up just making it a stronger one. Excuse me. So that's why a heroic resolve could be important, is if you're fighting somebody that could do one of those. For example, Thranduil, if upgrade from the Halls of good lord, Thranduil, from the Halls of Thranduil, if upgraded with Circlet of the Kings, there we go. Now I'm spitting it out good. Can do a auto cast Nature's Wrath that can only be resisted on a 6. So if you are going against said Thranduil, upgraded with Circlet of Kings from the Halls of Thranduil, there we go. Now we're cooking with peanut oil, and your opponent has not yet used Nature's Wrath, and you suspect it is coming, you can call a Heroic Resolve with a hero that has it. Because again, Heroic Resolve, like Heroic Channeling before this, are specialized ones. They're specialized heroic actions that only certain people have. Usually, folks who have Heroic Resolve are like the big name heroes. We're talking, again, Imrahil. We're talking Aragorn, Elisar. I'm trying to think of somebody else who has it. I believe, don't quote me on this, one of the Numenorian guys has it. I want to say Elendil has Heroic Resolve, but I'm not 100% on that. Okay? So it basically gives all your guys around you 1 dice to resist a spell. And that's pretty good, especially if you're facing maybe a casting heavy army and your opponent has been, doodling your your infantry, your warrior models around, or doodling your one-will heroes around. It gives you a better chance to resist things, basically. And that is stackable, too, with other things like resistance to magic. It's kind of confusing looking at it in the book. That's why I had that pause there. The catch-22, though, for this heroic action, because there's always kind of a downside to heroic actions. So channeling, again, like I said, you have to spend a point of might, and you got to remember to call it. Heroic movement, you've got to keep, if you do a with me, you've got to keep all the models within that with me, they're inside the 6-inch range of the with me. They have to end their movement within 6 inches of the hero that called it, or they're not allowed to move. And if you do a heroic movement, so heroic resolves catch-22 is the fact that whatever hero calls it, because again it goes off instantaneously, it's not waiting for the hero to move. That hero cannot move at all for that turn, because he's so focused on making sure that his guys, or warriors and heroes alike around him, are strengthening their will against potential enemy magical spells. So that's why he's not allowed to move. So that's the catch-22 to that. So the last one in the movement phase, and another one that is situational, and you have to remember to use it properly, is Heroic March. So Heroic March occurs on your priority of movement. Okay, so Heroic Movement usurps the chain of command, or not the chain of command, usurps the normal operation of events, would allow a non-priority player to move first. Heroic Channeling happens when you move the model that has called the channel. Heroic Resolve, again, that was a good one, happens immediately. Heroic March, like Heroic Channeling, occurs when your hero moves. So it could be canceled before you even get a chance to move. But what does Heroic March do? Basically, it allows you to move more distance. So we'll go back to the scenario I was talking about earlier on in this video, where if you're playing to the death, the deployment zones are your back 12 on a 24-inch board half, and your opponent's back 12 on his 24-inch board half, okay? If you're playing on a standard 4x4. I know some folks can't do it. If you can't, I would recommend you scale your deployment accordingly to whatever size table you're playing on. But for an army that doesn't have a lot of shooting, you want to get to your opponent quickly. So to the death can really hurt you there, because you're trying to move 24 inches, which we'll say it's a foot army. That's 4 turns of movement where your opponent can sit back and shoot you. And it could be up to 5 turns of movement, because if they kite you a little bit, they could move farther back and really force you to come to them. So there is that. And that's what Heroic March is for. So Heroic March enables a hero to swiftly cover a greater distance, ignoring the chaos around them to rush into a position. So this is reflected by adding 3 inches of your movement if you have the infantry keyword, and 5 inches of movement if you have the cavalry keyword. Okay. Models who utilize the Heroic March, though, may not charge in the same move phase. So that's the catch-22 to that. So you're going to get to move further, but you cannot charge this turn. So if you say, for example, you're playing Rohan again with all-mounted Rohan. Well, all-mounted Rohan would all have cavalry keyword. So they would get an extra 5 inches. So they would be able to charge 15 inches. I'm sorry, not charge. They'd be able to move 15 inches in that turn. So if your opponent is sitting 13 inches away, guess what? You can't charge them. You have to sit an inch away from them. And if it's your priority and you're moving first or moving, we'll say 12 inches, because you got to stay that 1 inch away for control zone purposes. If you enter a control zone, you must charge. Then guess what? You're going to get charged. So again, it's situational for how you want to use it. And there's a lot of scenarios out there that is good for. Reconnoiter, storm the camp, hold ground, I'd even say as well. To the death, like I mentioned. Destroy the supplies. I'm trying to think what else. Domination, depending on where the objectives are placed at. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. Nothing's really jumping out at me at the moment. But those are the sort of ones, I think, yeah, we'll go with those. Those are the sort of scenarios where maybe having a Heroic March could be very useful for your army. My recommendation is to always have Heroic March in your army. Now, March is one of those ones that, again, it's specialized. As I said before, these 3 are specialized. Resolve, March, and Channeling. You usually see it only in unnamed heroes. So we're looking at Captains of Minas Tirith, Captains of Rohan, Mordor Orc Captains, Morannon Orc Captains. Now, there are named heroes out there that have it. Théoden has it. Aragorn Elisar has it. I want to say Gothmog has it, but don't quote me on that. There's an evil hero that has it, and I can't remember which one it was. Lurtz has it. I know Lurtz has it because he's a scout, so he's got to be able to march. But yeah. So the other caveat to this is at the double. Well, pardon me. It's no good if you just move your hero himself those extra 3 inches if he has infantry keyword, or 5 inches if he has cavalry keyword, because then he's leaving his troops behind. So Heroic March has something that's called at the double, and that allows you to do the similar thing as Heroic Movement in a 6-inch bubble around you. Now, 6 inches, remember, this is a radius, so you're measuring 6 inches from the edge of your base. So you're talking about a 12-inch diameter, and usually the way we play it, and this is how I've always played it, and most people play it, is it's base edge to base edge. So if you measure from the edge of your base on a 40 mil base, and it touches the edge of another base, guess what? That guy's in a 6-inch range. That's how we've always played it. That's how we've always ruled it. I haven't really seen anybody else do it any other way. So you're talking about a 12-inch diameter, which is actually a little bit bigger, and I'm not going to math it all out and do the trigonometry, but put a 40 mil base down or a 25 mil base down, and then draw a 6-inch range all the way around the outside of that if you want with a compass or a protractor. And that'll give you the overall diameter. Like I said, I don't really feel like trying to do the trigonometry to figure out exactly what that would be, because it's going to be more than 12 inches. It's going to be a small fraction larger. Might be like 12 and a half. But yes, so they are allowed to do that, and any models that fall inside that are allowed to do it. Now, here's the thing with Heroic March, and this is something I want to make sure people understand. It happens when the hero model moves. So if you're in a situation, unlike Heroic Movement, where the hero has to move first, and he's the first one to move, even if you don't have priority, or even if you do have priority, you can move your other models around the hero before enacting the march. So the march has the same catch-22 with that at the double as the Heroic Movement did when it's calling, with me. If they start within 6 inches and they take part, they have to end within 6 inches. But follow me with it. Follow me with this, all right? And I'll try and put a little demographic up on the screen here. Ooh, excuse me. Wow, burping up. Burping up dinner. Lovely. I'll try and put a little demographics screen up here so you can follow along. Say you have 3 models. 2 warriors, 1 hero. All right? So we got warrior model A, warrior model B, hero 1. Hero 1 calls heroic march. Warrior model A moves his 6 inches. And we're going to say that they can all move 6 inches. Okay? We'll say the infantry keyword, moving 6 inches. Warrior 1 moves. Completely okay with that. Or warrior A. Now we go to hero 1. So hero 1 now enacts his heroic march, calls at the double, moves his 9 inches. Well, that warrior A that already moved, he cannot move anymore this turn. So he, by default, is not taking part in the heroic march. Now, warrior B does take part in the heroic march and must therefore move 9 inches, if he wants to, up to 9 inches, I should say, because you don't have to move 9 inches. You can move up to 9 inches and end within 6 inches of hero 1. All right? So that is key to remember. That's a way to that's also a way to do something where if it's an objective-based game and you've got enemy models in front of you, but you've got the priority and you've got enough of your own warriors or other models around to tie up your opponent's models and remove their control zones, you can then use your hero and do his march and run past and still get the bonus of the 3 inches for infantry and 5 inches for cavalry. All right? So that's a tactic to think about as well. So those are the 4 heroic actions that you can do in the movement phase. Heroic movement, heroic channeling, heroic resolve, and heroic march. So, hope you guys learned something from this. For those who are players that know this already, if there's anything I missed, please let me know. It's always good to get discussions out there. But for anybody else who's, like I said, new to the game, I hope you learned something. Thank you all for watching and subscribing and following along. I appreciate it, as always. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video, where I'll be talking about the heroic actions that take place during the shooting phase. So take care, everybody, and I'll see you later.